Sounds good. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, good. Well, I am short. I typically don't stand behind a podium. Can you see my eyes? Okay, all right. I'll try not to walk around too much. I want to introduce Marta Haugen. She is back there with the camera. This is being recorded for educational purposes. And Marta is our communications coordinator. So she is here with me today. How many people have heard of Safe at Home other than seeing it on the agenda? Oh, okay, that's great. How many people have worked with someone or helped someone who's in Safe at Home? Okay, that's great. How many of you have questions? Okay, okay. All right. So I have about a half an hour to talk, and I'm a really informal speaker. If you have questions, just raise your hand. I get it. Sometimes the way our brain unpacks things, we just have to ask the question while we have it in our head, and that's totally fine. I totally understand that. And if at any time you can't hear me, okay, let me know, and I'll use my mom voice. I had two boys. I got a mom voice. So anyway, my name is Diana Humadon. I am the director of Safe at Home. Safe at Home started in 2007, and I came on as the director of Safe at Home a couple weeks after it started. So sometimes it's not a good thing to have me speak because I can tell you lots of stories, and if you ask me a question, I'll give you a long answer, so I'll try not to do that to you today. And here's another question. Has anybody heard me speak before? I'm sorry. I'm going to speak again. So hopefully it'll be maybe some new things that maybe you forgot or something. So, all right, so let's get going. So what is Safe at Home? Safe at Home is our state's Address Confidentiality Services Division of the Office of the Minnesota Secretary of State. There are lots of different state laws here and there that reference Safe at Home, but the main laws that govern Safe at Home are Minnesota Statutes Chapter 5B, and then Minnesota Administrative Rules Chapter 8290. There's also a pretty healthy section in the Data Practices Act about Safe at Home, in case you're ever bored or you want to geek out and read laws and things like that. That's where you can find that. If you would like a whole list of different references, I have a one-page handout, and you just email our office. I'm happy to send that to you if you would ever like it. I'd like to start with making sure people understand what Safe at Home is not, because I think there are a lot of misperceptions about what Safe at Home is. I'm going to put my glasses on here because I'm old. So Safe at Home is not an advocacy program. We are not victim advocates. We do partner with victim advocates, but we are not professional victim advocates. We are public administrators. We're with the Secretary of State's office. Safe at Home is also not a resource to find housing. I think sometimes people think that we find housing for people just because of the name Safe at Home, and we do not do that. Safe at Home is not a program that gives out fake addresses. In the past, I've had people call our office and say, hey, I want one of those fake addresses that you give out. We do issue an address. It is not a fake address. It is a real address. It's a P.O. box. We have a key for it. Go touch it, you can see it. So it's a real address. It's also not a witness protection program. Sometimes, there have been a couple of times, two in particular that I can think of over the years, where we have had a participant go about their life and say to people that they're in Minnesota's witness protection program. It's not the witness protection program. It is a program, it is services that can protect witnesses. I'll touch more about that in a second. Maybe witnesses in criminal matters or something, but it's not the witness protection program like you see in the movies. So, as I said, we are a division of the Minnesota Secretary of State's office. Safe at Home is a tool for people with very, very extreme safety needs. And we do issue an address. As I said, it is a real address. It's a P.O. box address, and we provide we're not just a program, but we provide address confidentiality services. There are a lot of different things that we do. but we are an address confidentiality program. There are many states that have services like Safe at Home in Minnesota. In fact, there are about 40 other states that have programs. They're all called ACPs. Sometimes it's not referred to as Safe at Home, and some states just refer to it as an address confidentiality program. These are our current statistics. These change daily, and they really change hourly. Every day we have people that come into Safe at Home and have people that exit Safe at Home. And people can get canceled. I'll touch more on that in a little bit. But if they're canceled, they do have the ability, if they're still eligible, to reapply. Just because somebody's inactive one day doesn't necessarily mean that they will be reactivated the next day. So this number changes. Right now we have just over 4,400 participants, but we serve, this year we'll probably serve about 6,000 applicants and participants. The number just keeps going up. I actually thought we were gonna plateau quite a few years ago, but the number served and the number of participants just keeps going up every single year. Eventually we will plateau. What I mean by that is the amount of people that enroll and the amount of people that exit will pretty much even out. Because if we continue to grow, eventually everybody in the state of Minnesota would be in Safe at Home, and that's not going to happen. So eventually we'll plateau. Current households, we have over 2,000 households. Application assistants are people that we partner with. They voluntarily partner with our office. They are professional victim advocates, and they help people with the application process. We have almost 400 throughout the state of Minnesota. Every single county is served by an application assistant that can help somebody with an application. And we have over 160 locations where somebody can go and fill out an application. To be eligible for Safe at Home, it's pretty simple. You have to actually live in Minnesota. The law changed July 1st where somebody who doesn't now live in Minnesota but plans to relocate to Minnesota within 60 days is eligible to apply, which I think is a really good thing because people move around from state to state. But to be permanently certified in Safe at Home, you do have to actually reside in Minnesota. And a person has to be afraid for their personal safety or live with someone who's afraid for their personal safety. It isn't just that someone wants to be private or wants privacy, but they're afraid of a person or some people that if they would physically find them, they would harm them or kill them. A fair amount of people in Safe at Home have had people that have attacked them, have tried to kill them, have harmed them in very significant ways. And sometimes the result of that is the participant may have a permanent brain injury or some type of cognitive deficit because someone has tried to strangle them, or PTSD or something like that, because it was very, very serious. So we're talking about people with very, very extreme safety needs. The third one, which is more of a disqualifier, is that if someone is a registered predatory offender, they are not eligible for Safe at Home. For the most part, most of the people who apply to Safe at Home, it's all self-reported, self-reported victimization data. We do ask on the application why somebody is applying to be in Safe at Home. They don't have to answer that question, and they can have more than one reason, but we started collecting this data the second year of Safe at Home, and consistently, every single year, the number one reason is domestic violence. The number two reason is always stalking. The number three reason is always sexual assault. Over the last 5 years, we have seen people apply because of professional safety concerns, law enforcement, judges, prosecutors, and other professionals that have safety concerns. So, and I just want to stress that Safe at Home isn't just for survivors of domestic violence. If somebody has a safety concern, a serious safety concern, they are eligible to apply. And if you see me looking at my phone or at my watch, it's not because you're boring me, it's because I want to make sure I'm on time. So, any questions so far? Okay. So how does it work? Our office issues an alternate address, sometimes it's referred to as a designated address or a substitute address, that the person uses, every participant uses it as their home address. But the law also allows them to use it as their work address or their school address. So that is their address for all purposes. If they're filling out an application for something and it asks for a residential address, they use the substitute address that our office issues them. By law, all public and private entities in the state of Minnesota must accept that substitute address. That is their address for all purposes. Our office does know their real address. We have to always know their address, so that's the deal. The law affords them the ability to use this alternate substitute address, but our office always has to know what their true address is. All of the participants share the same P.O. box, and that's the address that our office issues. It's a P.O. box in St. Paul. There's only one Safe at Home address. It's in St. Paul. This is it, P.O. Box 17370 in St. Paul. So if you're interacting with somebody who says they're in Safe at Home and they give you a P.O. box in St. Cloud or Minneapolis or anything else, that is not the Safe at Home P.O. box. You are not required to accept that. You are only required to accept this one. Because thousands of people are in Safe at Home and they all share the same P.O. box, we have to be able to distinguish one household from another. So we also assign a unique lot number that is just for that household. And then sometimes even adults that live together will have different lot numbers. We have numerous people in Safe at Home that have exactly the same name. So the lot number really helps distinguish, whose mail is whose and who is who. The lot number is a very important part of the address. If you're sending something to a Safe at Home participant and you don't include the lot number, it will be returned to you. We return that to sender with a big stamp that says it needs to have a name and a lot number. Okay? Questions? So it doesn't matter where someone lives, where a participant lives, they will always have a St. Paul P.O. box. Doesn't matter where they live in the state, their Safe at Home address will be a St. Paul P.O. box. And the application process is, as I said, I mentioned application assistants. Well, those are professional advocates that our office trains. They voluntarily partner with our office. And they meet with someone who is a potential applicant, a survivor or a victim, and it is a face-to-face meeting. They go in and they meet with that advocate and they talk about what the safety concerns are. And they, I don't like to use the word screen, but in essence they're really screening to see if this person, A, meets the eligibility requirements, which are pretty simple. I said, have to live in Minnesota, have to have be in fear for your safety. So they're checking to see if they meet eligibility, and then they're also determining whether that person is a good candidate. Not everyone's a good candidate for Safe at Home because relocation is key for Safe at Home to work. If somebody has lived at an address for any significant length of time, by that really probably like a couple of months maybe, and then they enroll in Safe at Home, it's not about going back and putting toothpaste back in the tube. It's not about redacting information that's already out there. It's about only using the assigned address as they go forward. So everyone relocates around the time of enrolling in Safe at Home. If someone isn't going to do that, let's just say they own their home and they have no plans to move, that property record is public, Safe at Home will not work for them. So part of what the application assistant is doing is trying to suss some of that out and determine whether applying to Safe at Home is a good safety strategy for that person. They're also doing some safety planning with that person. If somebody has serious enough safety concerns that they need to apply to an address confidentiality program, there's probably a lot of other things that they should be doing too. They need to think about their kids in school, maybe they need to change their workplace. That advocate works with them and does that safety planning with them. And then they also help that person, maybe connect them to other resources. Maybe they need some financial assistance. Maybe they're helping them with an OFP and they're going to court with them or something like that. So that's what the application assistant, that's how they help people apply to Safe at Home. They help them with the application, and then it gets put in the mail, and then our office receives it, and then we take it from there, because we administer Safe at Home services. When we get an application, we will reach out to the person, the applicant on the application. We'll ask a few questions. We make sure that everything that we need on the application is there. We'll reach out to them, do a lengthy intake call, and then we go ahead and enroll them. Another word for that is certify. They're certified. And when we enroll people, they're enrolled for 4 years. They do have the option to renew at the end of 4 years if they feel that they still need the services. Some people don't. Some people just need to get through a crisis period in their life. And that's what it is. When somebody applies to Safe at Home, it is during a crisis period. Nobody ever says, things are going great, I'm going to join an address confidentiality program. It's usually the worst time in their life. And some people, we have had some people that have been in since the beginning, and they probably will always be in Safe at Home. And then there's some people that will only be in for less than a year, and then they feel okay. They have the option to withdraw if they feel that they don't need the services anymore. We send each household enrollment materials, and everybody gets a Safe at Home card. Even babies get a card, so if you're interacting with someone and they said they're in Safe at Home, and then they said, I never got a card, that's not true, everybody gets a card, everybody gets a lot number. And I brought a sample of what the card looks like. It has their name, has their Safe at Home address, it has their date of birth, and the expiration of their certification. They're not required by law to, I'll pass it out this way. They're not required by law to carry the card on them, but most people do find that it's helpful to carry it in their purse or in their wallet. And then, so we send them their enrollment materials, and they have to keep us updated all the time. As I said, they can withdraw at any time if they feel that they don't need the services anymore. More times than not, though, people are actually canceled as opposed to withdrawing. They have to keep us updated always with their address. We're an address confidentiality program, and so that's what we keep confidential. And so the most common reason why someone is canceled is their mail becomes undeliverable. I'll talk about mail in a second. And they've changed their address and they haven't updated our office. Also common is maybe they changed their legal name and didn't update us, or they changed their phone number and didn't update us. We don't require that people have a phone, but we do require to have, we need a viable phone number to contact them. Am I going too fast? Aside from a participant's name and assigned Safe at Home address, all of our data is classified as private data under Minnesota law. Our information is kept under security. Our database is an air-gapped network, meaning that you have to actually be in the office to access any data. Nothing can be accessed from outside of our office. And you take a lot of extra precautions and security measures to make sure that that data is safe. We don't keep people safe, we keep data safe. Sometimes participants will say, well, you're supposed to be keeping me safe. No, we issue you an address that you use as a tool and you keep yourself safe. And we help them, we help them understand how data is shared and how they can use their Safe at Home address effectively. We help with interactions with maybe third-party stakeholders if they're interacting maybe like with a bank or something like that, and somebody doesn't understand what Safe at Home is or what the legal obligations are. That's what our office does. We help with that, but we don't keep people safe. We keep data safe, and so we take that very seriously. This is just a list of some things for which only the Safe at Home address must be accepted. And when I say all public and private entities have to accept the Safe at Home address, it's not that the entities accept the Safe at Home address for the mailing address, and they also collect the residential address. It is only the Safe at Home address that is collected. And this isn't a full list, but just to give you an idea, driver's licenses, state IDs. The driver's license, the only PO box that Minnesota allows on a driver's license is the Safe at Home PO box and the state ID. Automobile insurance, renter's insurance. For school enrollment, families only disclose the school district that they actually reside in. We even have some federal exceptions. That's why we tell participants, you know, if you are interacting, you get pushback from a third-party stakeholder, don't just disclose your address. Call our office first. More times than not, they're wrong, and there are so few exceptions. It just needs to know that just don't give your address to other people. For county-based services, the participant just needs to disclose their true county of residence and then provide their Safe at Home address. Energy assistance is on here. I'll get into some more specifics, as will Sandy later. And I don't need to go through the whole list, but you can read it. Even law enforcement has to use their Safe at Home address, and even courts. And as I said, there are some federal exceptions. Another exception would be, there's an exception to the Patriot Act requires when somebody opens up an account with a financial institution, that financial institution has to collect their residential addresses by federal law. Minnesota was the first state to extend its address confidentiality laws to the private sector. What I mean by that is in 2007, when Safe at Home began, there were about 10 states with an address confidentiality program. They all extended only to government offices. Those laws, it only required government offices to accept that substitute address. And that was just because of, you know, public data and government data and, you know, transparency and things like that. And so when Minnesota passed its laws, we like to do things better than everybody else, right? So he said, no. We want people to be really, really safe. We're going to extend the laws to the private sector. And so I remember when I first started this job way back in the fall of 2007, at that time, there were these monthly calls with all the states that had an address confidentiality program. It was a conference call. And I remember the first conference call that I was on, and I introduced myself, and then somebody said, oh, Minnesota, you're that state that's going to extend to the private sector. And then I heard a bunch of people laugh, and then someone said, well, you know, we'll check back with you and see how that turns out. And so nobody thought that it would actually really work. Well, it does work. It does mean that we do a lot of work in our office. It's very comprehensive. But we were the first state to do that, and it actually pushed the envelope. So this is why I don't speak very much anymore, because I give you a lot of background stuff. So it pushed the envelope in a lot of different areas, and one of them was with the financial institutions, because that's not a government office. And so we worked with the Minnesota Bankers Association, and they were like, yeah, we get it, that's fine, you know, they can, you know, banks will just collect the Safe at Home address. Well, banks, of course, were like, no, we have to be CIP compliant, there's the Patriot Act, we need an address. We got an oral exception from FinCEN and the Department of Treasury. Banks were like, no, we want something in writing. So we waited, and we didn't get anything in writing, and then I reached out to Senator Klobuchar's office and said, can you help with this? She was great, and within a couple of months, we got an actual directive and ruling in writing. You can look online, you can see it. They not only gave an exception for every Minnesota Safe at Home participant, but they said any person in the country who is in an address confidentiality program is exempt from disclosing their address, their residential address, to open up a bank account for banking purposes. So, and I just give you that as an example, as you know, we've been able to sort of make some headway in ways that hadn't been done before. Another way that we're a little bit different is that because of, you know, extending to the private sector, we were the first state to develop a process and to pass laws for our participants, once they're in Safe at Home, to purchase real property, to purchase a home, and to have everything privatized in both the public sector, government records, and also in the private sector with the lender, the title companies, and everybody else involved. And so we were the first state to do that, and a couple of other states have now modeled their process after us. And now there are probably about 4 other states that also went back and changed their address confidentiality laws to extend to the private sector. So that's a little bit of history of how things have changed in this country. And there are about 40 states now that have address confidentiality programs. Eventually, I think every state will have one. Georgia recently had some legislation signed, a bill signed, and I think probably eventually every they'll all extend to the private sector as well. So I think that's a really good thing. So I'm going to quickly talk about the mail process here. If a participant is using their safe at home address effectively, all of their mail is going to the P.O. Box in St. Paul. They do not pick up their mail there. Our office picks up the mail. We take it back to our office and we sort it according to lot number. We also separate it in a lot of different ways because we only forward their first class mail to them. We know where they actually live, so we put their first class mail in a brown envelope, put an address label on it, and we send it to their home. If they're using Safe at Home effectively, the only mail that they're getting at their home is mail that goes through our office, and we send it to them in a brown envelope. If they're getting other mail at their home, that means they're telling other people their address and they're not really using the tool effectively. We forward first class mail, as I said, and we do not forward most packages. We'll forward medicines that they've told us about, or packages being sent by a government entity. Other than that, we don't forward packages. It's cost prohibitive, and we don't want to forward, well, tracking devices now can be really, really small, but for safety reasons, we don't forward packages. We do offer them a bunch of other suggestions in their enrollment materials for how they can get packages, and so we can brainstorm with them to see what would be the best thing for them. I kind of already talked about this. We process about 1 million pieces of mail a year. We have a whole mail unit and a pretty hefty mail room. Again, it doesn't matter where somebody resides in Minnesota. Their safe at home address is the P.O. Box in St. Paul. And even if somebody were to know somebody's true address, they are required to send mail to them at their safe at home P.O. Box address. Any questions about mail? Or anything else? I'm flying pretty quickly. Am I going too fast? Great. We are their agent to receive mail, meaning we can sign for certified mail or registered mail. We're also their agent for service of process. As you can imagine, a fair amount of our participants have legal matters ongoing, and we will accept personal service. We also accept service through the mail. Typically that's certified. We can sign for it. Because we're the agent, as soon as we receive that service of process, it's just the same as if the participant has received it. We'll call them and let them know that they've been served. A lot of times they already know what it's about. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they want to know the court date and things like that, and we'll let them know that. But we are their agent. There are directions on our website about how to serve a participant. And even a court must accept, I mentioned this earlier, even courts have to accept a safe at home participant's address. If the opposing party really feels as though their real address must be disclosed, there's by statute, it's section 5B.11 kind of outlines some criteria that a judge has to walk through, sort of an analysis to determine whether someone's true address is really needed in this instance or whether it's not. A judge could walk through that analysis and determine that no, the address is not needed in this instance. Or a judge could do the same thing and conclude that yes, safe at home participant, you must disclose your address in this instance. So, what do you need to know for purposes of, and I know Sandy, you're going to get into some of this as well, so I probably go a little and I'm on time. I feel pretty good. Okay. So, a safe at home participant uses their assigned P.O. Box address, not their real address on the EAP application. And if I'm covering what you're going to cover, I apologize. They do not disclose their Social Security number on the energy assistance application. And then they will redact their real address on any documentation that they provide to you. For home visits, if there are repairs or deliveries to the home, of course, a Safe at Home participant will be very, very anxious and extremely nervous about anything like that when people come to their home. And it's good to discuss ways to keep their name and address from being shared. And Sandy, you may touch on this. Okay, so I'll let you kind of cover that part. But as you can imagine, anyone that needs to come to the home makes them very, very nervous. And what I would recommend is that the more information that you can give to them, that helps them feel at ease. Because a lot of times I know that participants will call our office with questions and concerns, and it's really about them not just understanding, not having enough information. And it's part of our job is to sort of peel back the onion of what are really your concerns in this instance, and helping them understand. And many times it's a matter of, well, did you ask so-and-so? Did you call the number in your letter? Did you ask? And they haven't even really asked. They just sort of like, and I think it's sort of, I don't want to say not everyone struggles with PTSD, but it's sort of like, oh, I'm really afraid, I don't know what to do, and they don't want to ask questions, and so they'll call our office, wanting to have a conversation. And we're happy to do that. It's just we have to encourage them to, and kind of empower them to ask the right questions. So that the more information they have, I think the better people feel. It's like we're all like that, right? Things that we don't know sort of make us feel unsafe and unsure sometimes. Another thing important to know is that in larger companies, there's portals, but the address will not, the customer service address will not be displayed in the portal. And that's something that we worked, I can't remember what year that was, many, many years ago. Yeah. You were very helpful, the Department of Commerce was very helpful in helping us address that. So we got that covered. And in really rare instances, you may see what's called a notice to government entity form. We give that to participants in really rare instances where they may call our office because a government entity or extension of government entity has their address and they have a concern. I guess it's not so much, I don't think for each, but just to give you an example, probably a better example, if there's an incident at their home and law enforcement needs to go to their home, they would call our office afterwards, even though on this incident report attached to their name, it would be their safe and home address, it's still that they came to the house, right? So they'd call our office and they would be, nervous, like what do I do about this situation? These people now have my address. We'd talk it through with them, and if we think it's appropriate, we would send them this form called Notice to Government Entity where they would complete it, turn around, give it to that sheriff's office or police department. And what that does is that it prohibits further sharing and only allows it under some certain circumstances. So it puts it on super secret lockdown, private data probation, basically. And that's just a way to kind of stop the further sharing of that. Again, it would be rare that you would see that, but in rare instances we would give that. And again, it's not something we always provide, but we would talk through the situation. Sometimes it's a situation where the participant just doesn't really understand like data practices and how data is shared and classifications of data, which, how many people in here, like, there's times I read stuff and I'm like, what? So it's just complicated, and so to expect our participants to understand all of that is sometimes, I think, expecting a lot. So we just help them understand that. Questions? Any question is good. Yep.
How do participants register to vote, and can they vote by absentee ballot?
That's a great question. Right before you said that, I said I didn't cover voting. I thought that in my head. They can register to vote as an absentee voter through Safe at Home. Voting through Safe at Home is the only way for them to vote and not have their, disclose their address to other people. They cannot, there's no process for them to vote at the polling place without disclosing their true address. So it's all done absentee through the mail, through our office. We never see their ballot, but we make sure that they get the correct ballot. It's a really complex process. We make sure they get the correct ballot, and then they return it to us with a signature envelope. We take the ballot that's in the tan envelope, right, without seeing the ballot. We take the signature envelope because it has their name on it and everything. We keep that in our office, and then we put it in another envelope, send it to the county, just letting the county know the jurisdiction information and everything. So it's all done absentee through our office. The very first address confidentiality program that started was in the early 1990s in Washington State. And it started because a woman was tracked down by her abuser through voter records. And so at the time, she wrote to the then Secretary of State in Washington and said, I don't feel like I should have to choose between voting and being safe. And so they put their heads together and came up with the very first address confidentiality program, and then states one by one, which is often why, like ours is, housed in the Secretary of State's office. It's a great question. Oh. I got the almost closing window sign from Marta. More questions? Anything is fine. Any question? There's no dumb question. Yep.
My question probably is a smart question.
No, it's okay.
I was just wondering if, like, someone who had their identity compromised, say someone stole their information, filed taxes, and did all of this stuff, and they know where the person lives, is that person eligible for Safe at Home, or is that not part of it?
Yeah, if potentially they could be. Potentially they could be. A lot of times what we see is that's the main. A lot of times what we see is that abusers often know sensitive information, and then there's financial abuse, and there's that type of thing. I think you're probably talking more about maybe stranger identity theft. I don't know off the top of my head if we've had people enroll just for that reason, but potentially that could be. If they do have, a fear that someone will, hurt them or track them down, potentially could be. Yeah, that's not a dumb question at all. No, not at all. Yep. Any other questions? Okay, I thank you for your time and thank you for the work that you do. Thanks for your attention. Thank you so much. Oh, yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Diana, for coming and giving us the important information. And okay, thank you. And I'm going to try to use my mom voice because I also have 2 kids, so I don't know why I'm so quiet. So I'm going to speak up. Okay. How does this sound? Is that good? Okay. All right. She gave you all the background, so I'm going to just talk about more specific information and details. Talk about Safe at Home applications in EHEAT, online applications from Safe at Home households, staff review of these training videos which we're making today, some resources for SP staff and for Safe at Home applicants, energy-related repair for Safe at Home, and home ownership documentation. And some of this might be repetition, but this is used for training ongoingly, so it's kind of nice to have it all in one spot. So as you know, Safe at Home applications in EHEAT, they're logged separately from non-Safe at Home applications On the login screen, there's a spot on the left, Safe at Home Applications, and you click the plus sign, and this opens up a blue button, Safe at Home Search button. You can log the application using a household number, and then you would click Search Safe at Home. Or you can select Other to search by the applicant's name. After entering the name and date of birth, you click Search Safe at Home. And then it will either find that person or return the message that that person was not found. And then if there's no record found, you click Create/log Safe at Home household. No household address can be entered for Safe at Home. It's all grayed out in that area, in the house address area. And as Diana referred to earlier, the universal Safe at Home address is P.O. Box 17370, and that's auto-filled right in eHeat when you log this kind of application. But as she mentioned, it's really important that you enter the household's unique lot number so they can actually get their mail. Okay, and I want to tell you about an eHeat enhancement that is being implemented for this next program year. So the idea is to prevent Safe at Home households from from logging Safe at Home applications as non-Safe at Home applications, all right? So if you're trying to log a prior year Safe at Home app, eHeat will warn you, this application is a Safe at Home household. If a prior year Safe at Home household applies and is no longer a Safe at Home participant, then you would log them as a new household. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. What if a pre-logged household submits an app and they've moved into or out of the Safe at Home program? You can't switch a household in eHeat to and from Safe at Home. It doesn't work. And you have to kind of think of them as now they're in different circumstances and they're basically a new household. So you enter them into eHeat as a new household, either via the regular logging or Safe at Home logging as appropriate. And I know we talked about Safe at Home applications via the online app earlier, and you should definitely dissuade households from using the online app. It requires, to do the online app, requires them to enter sensitive information, their household address, their SSNs, and we have a section in the manual, Online Applications from Safe at Home Households, that guides you on how to handle it when you do get a Safe at Home online app. So you determine, if this happens, you determine if the applicant applied in a prior year. You would print the PDF app summary document, and you reject the online app and use the app summary document like a paper app. And if the household previously applied as a Safe at Home household, then you'd log the app under the previously established household number via the Safe at Home logging system that we just talked about. If it's if the household is new to eHeat, then you would log it also via the app, the Safe at Home app system. And then for the Safe at Home household safety, you'd want to redact any household information that was private, such as the home address, SSN, etc., that was included in the online app related documentation. We want to point out a best practice in communicating with Safe at Home households. You heard about how the mail is handled. So it's going to be worse. Any mail delays are going to be worse for Safe at Home participants because the mail has to go from the source to Safe at Home, get packaged, and then go through the mail again. So it basically has to go through the mail twice. And the mail can be kind of dodgy these days, it seems like. So for best customer service to these households, we would like you to encourage them to select email as their preferred mail type, if that's an option that they would like to consider. And when possible, contact the household directly by phone rather than sending an RFI letter, especially if it's a short time frame that you need them to respond. And then I want to remind you that Safe at Home training videos are required for all staff, all eHeat staff, during startup, at the the beginning of each program year and when you're onboarding a new staff member. This year's training that you just saw by Diana will be made available, as well as this training that I'm doing right now. So we have new videos for you to watch. I'll remind you about the resources that we have, a fact sheet for each staff that provides information on how to safely interact with processing the application. It's on the toolkit. We have instructions you can provide to a safe at home participant that you're working with, also on the toolkit. And then, as Diana was talking about earlier, whenever you're doing any home visits, for example, ERR, even though we don't require them to provide their real address, obviously, to participate in energy assistance, it's impossible to provide ERR without knowing the physical address. And so the safe at home household must decide if they are willing to share their address for ERR. And then, of course, there's what you need to do to help keep them safe once they make that decision. The mechanical contractor also needs to protect their information, so it's helpful when you're setting up the ERR work to interact with the mechanical contractor and let them know that it's a safe at home participant and the importance of safeguarding their identity and address and reducing the paper trail as much as possible and never have the safe at home participant's name and address linked. And as Diana mentioned earlier, if the household has submitted a notice to government entity, then you must get signed content from them before providing any household information, for example, their phone number or anything, to the contractor. Sounds like that would be kind of rare, but in that case, you would need to do that in addition. And again, make it clear to the mechanical contractor that you're working with a safe at home household and explain the steps they need to help keep them safe. Don't use the safe at home participant's name when communicating with the MC. You can just use, the household number. And we do have a resource sheet that we made for mechanical contractors that's available to share with them too. So again, you need to keep the participant's name and address separate. For example, if the job requires a work ticket, just use the household number on the ticket and not the participant's name. Just leave that blank. And you should keep safe at home files locked up with access limited. Especially important if there's an ERR job results in work tickets that have the actual address on them. Okay, and then if the safe at home household is a homeowner and they're getting ERR services, they still need to provide home ownership documentation. But once you've reviewed the documentation and it's verified, you must redact the name from the document and then keep it in your locked files. And separate from the regular file. And that's all. Do you have any questions?